Ladies and gentlemen, here is currently how Bradford City squad is lining up ahead of the 2026 January transfer window. And in today's video, I'm going to go through every single member of our first team squad and decide whether they should be kept, loaned or sold in this upcoming winter transfer window. If you do go on to enjoy, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, can we try and hit 200 likes on today's video? And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below whether you agree or disagree with my selections. Now obviously we have 3 more games before the window does officially open, probably 4 as well because you're not really going to do much business on New Year's Day. So what that actually means for Bradford City and the players involved that I might potentially talk about in today's video that maybe do need to move on in the transfer window. If some of those players do end up playing over the next couple of games, then ignore what I've got to say, give it your all, because for some of these players that I might suggest, it might be for their own career's benefit, not necessarily because I think they've been poor. Let's waste no further time though and get straight into it. So we're going to go through each player individually and decide if I think they should be kept. I'll change them to a green colour. If I think they should be loaned, and then they will be changed to a yellow colour. And then obviously if I think they should be sold or contract terminate, whatever you want to call it, then that will obviously then be a red colour. We currently have 4 players out on loan, that being Zach Hayday at Clitheroe, I think, George Goodman at Guiseley, Clark Adore is obviously out on loan at Grimsby, and Harry Ibbotson is currently out on loan at Chorley. So starting out then with both of the first team keepers in Sam Walker and Joe Hilton, I think it's very obvious that Walker's our number 1. Joe Hilton is our number 2. I wouldn't say I've been massively impressed with Joe Hilton so far, but for me personally, I think that's not really 2 positions that we do need to be changing. Matt Pennington and Aidan Baldwin, I think they've proved to be very important for Bradford City so far, so they're definitely 2 players that I would like to see kept around. Obviously Baldwin now coming into the final year of his contract with the football club, but the proof is in the pudding. When he plays, we concede less goals, we win more football matches, and Matt Pennington has certainly been very impressive so far. Joe Wright, again, another man who we signed in the summer transfer window, still going to have 18 months left to run on his contract, and started out very well, then went on a bit of a dip in terms of his form, was costing us goals, scored the odd own goal as well, but recently I think we've seen him get back to his best, and he's certainly a player that I would like to see Bradford City keep around. Neil Byrne is next up then, and for me personally, he is the first player that I'm going to say Bradford City should be looking to sell in this upcoming January transfer window. Obviously Neil Byrne signed last summer for the football club. We paid a bit of money for him to get him away from Stockport, but now we're in League One. I think it's very clear that the standard is just ahead of where he is as a player. He was an okay-ish stopgap at times last campaign in League 2, played his part in our promotion, getting a couple of goals, obviously scored at home to Gillingham, scored away at Cheltenham. Without those goals, without those points, we obviously don't go on and win promotion. So I'd say thank you to Neil Byrne for his service to Bradford City. Obviously he was part of the squad that got us promoted out of League 2, but I personally do believe that League 1 is a step too far for him. We've seen in his appearances so far this campaign, on the whole, he has been quite poor. So again, nothing personally against him, as it never is with these type of videos, but I do think it is about time for him to move on, and then that allows us to hopefully bring in somebody better. Curtis Till, obviously signed in the summer, was brilliant for the first 6 or 7 games of the season, and obviously picked up that hamstring injury and hasn't featured competitively since for Bradford City, but again, another player that I would like to see be kept around. Tom McIntyre is a bit of an interesting one. Obviously the only player currently on loan at Bradford City. I don't really understand if there is a option for him to go back to Portsmouth in this January transfer window. Given the way that he kind of left Portsmouth, I think they'll just be happy for him to stay out on loan at Bradford City, keep his wages off of their wage bill. But Tom McIntyre, I do think, has been massively underused by Bradford City so far this campaign. I think when he's played, he has looked quite good, so he's a player that I would like to see Bradford City try and keep around. We'll change that text to black so you can see that. And Kieran Kelly then is the final centre back, and this is a very interesting one. Obviously with how I've currently got it, we would still have 5 centre backs on the books. Obviously you kind of want 2 for every position, but given the injuries that we pick up, you probably want 7 centre backs in total. But Kieran Kelly obviously signed a new 1-year contract in the summer with Bradford City, and I think we all know there is a good player in Kieran Kelly, but since his injuries I don't think he has quite been the same. I would say though that over the last last 2 league matches for Bradford City at home to Reading and away at Plymouth. He has looked quite good in both of those games, but I don't want recency bias to cloud my judgment in this, because there has been a number of games this season where Kieran Kelly has been very poor, and it's not like in those 2 previous matches he's been outstanding. He's been very good, and I'll give him a lot of credit for that. He seems to have taken on board whatever information Graham Alexander has been feeding him, but when you look, he's now into the final 6 months of his contract. Is he going to be wanting more consistent first team football? Probably. Can Bradford City offer that on a consistent basis if we're looking to push for promotion and try and get into the Championship? I don't think so. Again, I don't want recent judgment to cloud my vision here and what I think of Kieran Kelly. So for me personally, I think Bradford City should be looking to move him on in this January transfer window. If he plays how he's done in his last 2 games for the remainder of the season, I'm not against him staying at Bradford City, but I just think we need to see more consistency. I think he needs to improve his ability on the ball, and I'm not sure he can really go much further than bottom end of League One, and obviously we're looking to compete in the Championship. I don't think that he'll be part of our plans long term. Let's move on then to the wing backs then. Firstly, we'll start out with Josh Nerfield, who obviously had an exceptional first couple of months in a Bradford City shirt, but since September has been very poor. Recently has lost his place in the side as well to Brad Halliday. But again, we only signed him in the summer. He's still got another 2.5 years left to run on his contract. Obviously, if a crazy offer does come in for Josh Nerfield, I'm not against us selling him. I don't think he's somebody like a Metcalf or a Poynton who's been consistently good so far this campaign. He has been very inconsistent at times as well. Obviously, will eventually be sold by Bradford City for a lot of money, but for now, I think he is a player that I would like to see be kept around. Brad Halliday, obviously, his minutes have been very limited so far this campaign, but obviously, recently has worked his way back into the side, was very good in our recent win against Reading. I think Brad Halliday for me is somebody that will probably move on in the summer when his contract does end, and I think that's the right time for Brad Halliday to leave Bradford City. Give him that year in League One, which he deserves in his own. He's a very, very good League Two wing back. I think he certainly won't be shy of options, but now he's back in the 11 and proving his valuability, proving what he is worth to Bradford City. I think it makes sense to not make him move on in this January transfer window. I think he's clearly a player that's very well liked around the dressing room as well, and maybe the summer when his contract is set to expire, we're having a different sort of conversation. But Brad Halliday for now, I think he's more than good enough to be competing with Josh Nerfield in that wing back position. Over on the other side, Ibu Toure has been one of Bradford City's most consistent performers so far this season, so he definitely is somebody that I would be looking to keep around. And Lewis Richards, again, a very interesting one, similar to Kieran Kelly. Obviously, again, a struggle with injuries so far this campaign. He's going to be out until around the middle to the end of January with a hamstring injury, which again is a big blow for him, because I think when Richards is fit and available, he is a very, very good player. Obviously, we've not seen him feature at all in the league so far this campaign for Bradford City, but in a couple of the EFL Trophy games, I think he's looked quite solid. Away at Doncaster in the first half, I thought he had a really good performance in that one, but given that he is injured currently, I do think he'll be quite hard to move on. We've obviously got other options to play in that position, so when he's available, again, I think he is a good option for Bradford City, but the problem for him is he has struggled to stay fit, unfortunately, again, so far this campaign. But I think he's another one similar to Brad Halliday. Maybe the summer is a different type of conversation, but Lewis Richards for now, I think I would be looking to keep around, just because when he is available, he does bring us something different down at that left-hand side. I guess while we're talking about that left-hand side, we'll complete it with Tyreek Wright, who obviously has played at left wing-back at times, has played as a left attacking midfielder as well, and I do think this season has transformed his Bradford City career. Last campaign, I wasn't particularly impressed with Tyreek Wright, and there was a reason why the likes of Teo Adaramola and Lewis Richards did displace him. But this season, I think, despite Bradford City going up a level, I think Tyreek Wright's performance levels have been raised as well. He's had some really good performances so far this campaign. Again, another one who is out of contract with the football club in the summer, and maybe a different conversation is needed then. The lack of goal contributions has always been a bit of a problem for Tyreek Wright ever since his first spell with Bradford City, but I think it makes sense really to keep him around between now and the end of the season, and maybe we can have another discussion at that point, but I think for now it makes sense to just keep him around. Max Power obviously signed in the summer, being the club captain, I don't see him moving on as of right now, and clearly somebody that Graham Alexander does favour despite a recent dip in performance levels. Jensen Metcalf is one of my favourite players, and again one that should absolutely be staying at Bradford City, similar to Josh Nerfield, that at some point he will be sold for a lot of money by Bradford City, but we've seen recently he's worked his way into the side, he's shown a bit of consistency, and I think it's going to be hard for Patterson and Tommy Lee to displace him at this moment in time. I think he's showing a lot of qualities. Yes, he needs to start contributing more in terms of goals and assists, but for me personally, he is a very underrated player by not just Bradford City fans, but wider League One fans as well. I think Jensen Metcalfe is amongst one of the best midfielders in this division. Alex Patterson is a very interesting one because I was recently told that Alex Patterson could be moving on, or probably will be moving on in January. Now, I don't know how reliable that information is, but given how he's not been in a matchday squad for a while, there's been no reports of any injuries or anything like that. It does seem very bizarre that we've not really had any clarity on the situation with Alex Patterson. Now, if it's my decision, which is the whole purpose of this video, I would be looking to keep Alex Patterson around for at least until the end of the season. Again, his contract does expire in the summer, and given the odd injury problem that he has, I don't know, this season he's not really had anything too major, but I do think when Patterson is fit and available, he brings something to this side that nobody else has, that ability to press and cover so much ground in such a short distance. I think Alex Patterson is a very, very good player for this level, but unfortunately, he seems to have maybe fallen out of favour. Again, I don't want to start rumours and all that sort of stuff. This was just information that I was told, but I would be disappointed if Alex Patterson is moved on in this January transfer window, to be honest. Let me know what you think down below. Obviously, if you are enjoying today's video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Tommy Lee is up next then, and I think central midfield is a position that Bradford City should be looking to improve in this January transfer window. If I'm personally keeping Power, Metcalfe and Patterson, that doesn't really leave space to bring in another midfielder if I was to keep Tommy Lee. Obviously, he's still got 18 months left to run on his contract, and he's the first player that I think Bradford City should be looking to send out on loan in this January transfer window. Started out the season very good, but recently obviously he's been displaced and he's found minutes really hard to find as of right now. And I know coming into this Christmas period there's going to be rotations. Pretty much every player is going to be needed over the next couple of weeks, but I look at what Tommy Lee brings to Bradford City, I look at what our other midfielders also bring as well, and I just think it makes sense really from a career standpoint of Tommy Lee to go out on loan in League 2 and play consistently at that level, play every game, every minute between now and the end of the season, because that is what his career does need. He was obviously very stop-start throughout his time at MK Dons, signed a 2.5 year deal last January with Bradford City, and I just don't think it's a move that's necessarily worked out. I thought that Tommy Lee would do very well in League 1 as long as he was played as a central midfielder. He was obviously wasted last campaign as a striker or a number 10, but this year, having moved to being a central midfielder, I do think at the start of the campaign his performance levels certainly did raise. He looked like a competent League 1 midfielder, but I'd say similar to around the time where Josh Nerfel's performances dropped off, around that Newcastle Blackpool sort of time. Since then, Tommy Lee just hasn't found his ability to get back up to the same level as what he was showing at the start of the campaign. I think he's certainly a player who wants to play first team football. He obviously contributed to that goal against Fleetwood. He sent the ball long. So again, it's more from a career standpoint of Tommy Lee, where I think with him having 18 months left to run in his contract, I can't see us wanting to sell him after just a year, but then also we need to bring in a central midfielder. I think it's clear for all to see, so it makes sense really to allow Tommy Lee to go out on loan. Moving on to the attacking midfielders, Anthony Sarsfield and Bobby Poynton, very easily two players that have to be staying. Already up to 7 goals for them so far this campaign. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I think we've won like 1 game all campaign when them two haven't started in the league for Bradford City. They're very important to the way that we play. Two very, very good players for this level, and I know Sarsfield is out of contract with the club in the summer, but I think if we're in League 1 next campaign, even if we're in the Championship, I wouldn't be against giving Sars another year, but especially if we're in League 1, then Sarsfield for me does certainly deserve a new contract. And obviously Bobby Poynton, homegrown talent, one of our own, 100 appearances now for the football club and hopefully another 1,000 to come. He's an absolutely brilliant player with a very bright future ahead of him. Nick Powell is a very interesting one, obviously signed in the summer from Stockport County. Didn't really contribute much in a lot of the game time that he was getting at the beginning of the campaign, then picked up a 3-month hamstring injury, and he's not going to be back until around the middle to maybe end of January. But if it's possible, I'd be looking to cut ties with Nick Powell. I don't really see what he's brought so far, in all honesty. He his best performance to Bradford City has been on the podcast that they did. That's about it. On the pitch, he's offered very little, very injury prone, as we know, and I just don't think it's been a signing that has worked out. I thought we'd moved away from signing these injury prone 30-plus-year-olds, but apparently not. We always seem to sign one of them, and of course he picked up a 3-month hamstring injury, so hopefully we can move him on this January, but I do think it will be very hard for us to do. George Lapsley, for me personally, is one that could go either way, whether he's sold or loaned. I'll stick him on the loan list for now, but I think he's certainly a player who does need to move on. I think League One, again, for him, clearly is a step too far. I do think he struggled in a lot of his minutes. Granted, hasn't actually played that much first team football in the league, but recently has found himself as an unused substitute or can't even get into the matchday squad largely over the last couple of months. I think, again, with him, similar to Tommy Lee, having 18 months left to run in his contract, only signing for the club last January, I do think that it will be hard for us to move him on a permanent basis. I think he was on quite a bit of money at Gillingham, and I'm pretty sure we just took over his contract. So I think George Lapsley obviously massively contributed towards our promotion, given that he was the one who had the shot, which led to the ultimate winning goal. And I think he seems like a great character, does George Lapsley, but purely from a footballing point of view, I think we need some more depth in those attacking midfield positions, because we've seen whenever Sarsvik and Poynton aren't available, the drop-off in quality to the next player down is very significant. And I do think it makes a lot of sense really for Lapsley to leave the club, go out and play more consistently, because that's what he needs in his career, certainly at this stage, and I don't think he's going to get that with Bradford City. So hopefully he can go out on loan, do very well in League 2, and then get himself a move on a permanent deal in the summer is what will hopefully be happening. Right then, the hardest part of today's video, the 4 strikers currently on the first team books at Bradford City. Obviously, there is no doubt in my mind that Bradford City will be signing a striker in this January transfer window. Will it be Ryan Graydon? I guess only time will tell. If it's for 350 grand, I think David Sharp should be sacked on the spot, because that would be absolutely ridiculous, but I do think that he's certainly agents playing the market. But obviously we've got Will Swan, Stephen Humphries, Callum Kavanagh and Andy Cook. There's been a lot of talk around a lot of these players' futures, but in particular Andy Cook, it's always seems to be coming up. Obviously he's not been in the matchday squad over the last couple of weeks because he has been ill. Still is yet to start a league game for Bradford City despite being back available since the middle of September, something like that. His minutes have been very limited, but in a lot of games where he's come on off the bench, our performance levels have certainly improved. And Andy Cook for me is a player that I really like. I really like Andy Cook, and I know that's for what he's done for the club over the last 5 years or whatever you want to call it, but he's been with us for half a decade now. He's a proven goal scorer, and when all your other strikers combined have got 1 league goal between them since the 6th of September, then for me personally, I don't really understand why Andy Cook isn't getting more of a go. I think Stephen Humphries is a very, very hit and miss. He's certainly Marmite amongst the fan base. Will Swan, a player that I rate very highly, but unfortunately just hasn't really been doing it since the beginning of September. Had a great start to the season, but hasn't scored for 3.5 months now. And obviously Callum Kavanagh was okay at League 2 level, and I think he's massively struggled at League 1. I think first up, Callum Kavanagh, you either give him a new contract and send him out on loan, or you look to sell him in the transfer window. Obviously, he has 4 starts for Bradford City in the league. That's 3 draws and 1 defeat in those games. I think it now does make sense to sell Callum Kavanagh, get some money back for Kavanagh, who I think will go to a League 2 club and do very well, might get 8 to 12 goals between now and the end of the season. But the fact of the matter is, he's a young player who can't even get into the matchday squad as of right now. We're then going to bring in another player to play in his position. He's only going to fall further and further down the pecking order. Unfortunately, we've just progressed quicker than what he has as a player. I do think there is going to be a good player in there in the future, but as of right now, I just don't see a long-term future for Callum Kavanagh at Bradford City. I think we have progressed much further than he has developed as a player. We saw last campaign, he can score goals, but he only had a 13% goal conversion rate last campaign. That's simply not really good enough, and again, that's in the division below. Obviously, didn't score in any of his league games as well. So I do think from his career standpoint, from a financial point of view as well, it does make a lot of sense now that he's into the final 6 months of his contract to sell Callum Kavanagh, unless there's the option to trigger it for a further season. Maybe you then send him out on loan if you are going to trigger that contract, but again, we could be in the Championship next campaign. That is a big gamble to take. With Will Swan and Stephen Humphries only just signing in the summer transfer window, I don't see either of them moving on, given that they'll still have another 18 months left to run on their contract. So they are 2 players that I do think we will see stay. But again, we come back to Andy Cook. there is just a lot to talk about here with Cookie, isn't there? Some would argue that he's now 35 years of age, just come back from an ACL injury, and now would make sense to move on. I think from a dressing room standpoint and from a fan base standpoint, if you're thinking about Andy Cook moving on, it has to be in the summer when his contract does expire. Maybe if we get to the end of the season, I might have a slightly different judgment on things, but Andy Cook, for me, I just don't think he should be leaving. Look at his goal scoring record. Yeah, you might say it's in League 2, but the last time he was in League 1 with Walsall, he scored a lot of goals. I know that was 6 or 7 years ago now, but Andy Cook, for me, he's a very, very good striker who scores goals. He knows where the back of the net is. Will Swan hasn't scored since the 6th of September. Stephen Humphries has just 2 league goals all campaign. Yes, we're going to bring in another striker, and that might force Andy Cook's hand potentially. He might then see himself as 4th choice striker and want to move on, but I don't think he's had a fair crack at the whip. I don't think he's had enough football this season, given that our strikers simply aren't scoring goals. And I know we're still winning games at this moment in time, but I didn't understand how in that winless run where we went for 7 or 8 league games without a win, why Andy Cook wasn't starting any of those games. You look at the impact he had on off the bench away at Stevenage and away at Rotherham and at home to Lincoln, even at home to Burton. These type of games, whenever Cookie was coming on the pitch, our performance levels were massively improving. And okay, you can say recently under Graham Alexander we've played very poor in a lot of first halves, and then the second half we've got better when obviously that's where you are going to do your substitutes, and maybe you could say other players have had that impact. But I'll be very interested to hear your thoughts. I think Andy Cook is certainly the one that's going to cause the most debate down in the comment section down below. But that's my summary and preview ahead of January. I would personally like to see Kieran Kelly, Neil Burnett, Nick Powell and Callum Kavanagh move on a permanent basis, and then I'd like to see Tommy Lee and George Lapsley be sent out on loan. So that'd obviously then mean we have to bring in a couple of centre-backs, a central midfielder, a couple of attacking midfielders and a striker. Obviously, you can't do loads of business in January. I don't necessarily want us to do loads of business. We're second in League 1. We're massively overachieving, but I think it's clear to see that this is a very good opportunity for Bradford City to go back-to-back, to get into the Championship. All it requires is us to get a few moves right in this January transfer window, keep hold of our key assets like Sarcevic, Poynton, Metcalf, Nerfil, those type of players, and Bradford City could well be a Championship club come the summer. And again, I think this is why we're then probably still going to wait and see until the summer before we start giving out contracts, because we want to know what division that we're in, but we're in a great position. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there then for today's video. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, can we try and hit 200 likes, as I said at the start of today's video? And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below. Which players do you think should be sold and loaned out by Bradford City ahead of this window, and what positions do you think we need to improve in as well? Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one.